And welcome back, footy fans, to another episode of Donnie's Disposals. I am your host, Coach Donnie Hessair, back with another AFLW round review. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say it, thank God the condensed rounds are over. As much as I didn't mind footy 4 nights a week, actually, let me rewind, 6 nights a week, technically, when it comes to it. I am so glad this is over because after this particular round and all of that has gone, been said, and everything like that, thank God the condensed rounds are over. I had to get that off my chest. Thank you. Let's welcome in co-host extraordinaire, one of my favorite people to talk with. Had to bring her back. Few little issues when it comes to my original person that I had on, so had to have her hop on. Co-captain of the Norwood Footy Club and extraordinaire, Miss Steph Simmons. Simo, great to see you again.
Thanks for having me on again, Donnie. It's been, like you said, I'm very glad that the condensed fixture's over as well, not just for our sakes, but for the players' sakes as well. As much as I love watching footy almost every night after work, it's been great. But yeah, it would be very mentally and physically exhausting for them all. So I'm glad we're going back to just looking forward to footy on the weekend.
Do not mind it at all. It definitely makes my Tuesday and Wednesday afternoons a little less fun. I don't have 2 hours of women's footy to keep an eye on, but unfortunately, the way this has been going with the condensed fixtures, I do not mind that. I will have a few more longer weekends in the future. So we are through round seven. Finally, everybody has now played 8 games. Yes, 7 rounds through, and everybody's played 8 games. We know the math. Doesn't always math, but here we go. Let's go through it, Simo. Thoughts on round seven as a whole? All teams have finally got through their condensed fixture.
Yeah, really happy for them that they've gotten through it. We've only had a handful of teams that have sort of come out of the other end quite successfully, like one of them being Essendon, that have won sort of all their games through that condensed fixture. It's been a bit weird when you just, you see the Crows play on a Wednesday night, then all of a sudden I just watched them yesterday. I was like, I swear to God, I just watched them play. But like, yeah, I'm
Exactly.
just definitely put me out of whack. Definitely saw some games that considering the circumstances, we had some good games that still brought some quality, but then a big thing this week was, there's a few games that were called out by the quality of it or like the lack of quality and skill levels and stuff, which I guess is fair enough, but you have to put yourself in the player's shoes of how exhausted they would be. So of course there's going to be some games that are going to be it's hard to watch for some people, but you definitely can't like the effort that they're all going through. But it's still good to say that we saw some really quality games as well.
Yeah, definitely for sure. And this is how crazy it is that I know that some fantasy football fans are really happy about this last week because Ebony Marinoff, who's one of the top scorers, at least in the fantasy game that I have, scored 662 points this week because of 2 games. It was absolutely bonkers. But again, that's when you get 2 games for the Adelaide Crows and Ebony Marinoff is one of the best players for their team. That doesn't surprise me. But I agree with you. Like I was happy that there was footy every night of the week, but I agree with some of it. Like, unfortunately, we were not always treated to the, shall we say, standard that I think most of us probably expected. Again, I'm happy for the women because this was a stressful time period. You could tell it was starting to get to the wear on them mentally as well as physically because of having 2 games in the span of 6 or 5 or 6 days for some of them. But again, the results, I look at some of the results and I go, there were some cracking games of football. There was a goal. There's a couple of really close ones. You have the massive upset during this round that we'll talk about a little bit later. You have an upset over in the West, unfortunately, that I know Steph will not want to talk about, would do for her beloved Fremantle Dockers, but an interesting game out west later on in the round. But just an interesting round of footy. So let's dive right into it. 4 teams got the condensed fixture this last round. St. Kilda, GWS, Adelaide, and Melbourne. We will start off Tuesday night. Footy sees the Saints get a nice win over the GWS Giants 49-15. The Saints continuing to be right there amongst finals, and GWS, unfortunately, they're just trying to survive another season of mediocrity to less than lackluster football.
Yeah, fortunately, predicted early in the year that JDOS were going to be a pretty meh team. And yeah, unfortunately, that's not really they're not really proving me wrong. And I really do feel for them. But Saints, I'm glad are having a pretty good year to back up to, they just missed out on finals last year, so it was good to see them do well. Saints were just able to predict the play out of GWS's defensive 50. Even though GWS sort of won the clearances and all that. Um, and they were losing the hitouts with, you've got a dominant ruck, Saints, but and they also had more possessions and everything, but just Saints were just had more control of their kicking game that they're able to maintain possession really well. I think they've really worked on that over the last few years. So yeah, their control of possession to help build up their play just sort of outrun GWS. And then, you got guns like Jesse Wardlaw that dominated, who I'm a really big fan of. It's always good to see her excel in the games that she's been playing, and this game definitely proved that as well.
Yeah, it's just one of those. The first quarter really got GWS. I mean, you go down 20-1 after the first quarter, and then the Saints just kind of they would tick a goal, GWS may get one back. Like it literally kind of stayed and it kind of stayed in that point range there where it's just like St. Kilda was they did what they needed to do. They didn't expend too much extra energy. GWS again, just you kind of feel for them because they're in this purgatory. They're not bad enough to be a wooden spoon team, but they're not good enough to start fighting up the ladder and be close to that finals. They're sitting in this 16 to the 17 to 14 range, and they really can't go anywhere else because talent wise, unfortunately, they're not bringing in names to be able to kind of make up for some of the losses that they had. I mean, Isabel Huntington, I think, unfortunately, ever since she's left the Western Bulldogs, hasn't really materialized into the player I think a lot of people expected us to kind of see that she'd go up there and she would explode as a superstar. She would didn't have to worry about any of the other stars around her. That she didn't have to worry about Bonnie Too Good taking away some of her things. She didn't have to worry about Ellie Blackburn. She didn't have to worry about Ellie Blackburn taking away her shine. Unfortunately, she's been moved around too much. She's been down back. She's been up forward. She's been down back. She's been moved up forward. She hasn't really gotten a lot of continuity in her game, and I kind of feel horrible for her. Alicia Eva has been a nice move from the midfield to the forward. She's kicking goals as a small forward, which I've been pleasantly surprised for them. And Zarly Goldsworthy is an absolute superstar. But the issue is that they just don't have that depth of talent. They're missing a few. I know Nicola Barr is out for the season. There's a couple others that are done for the year that GWS unfortunately they're missing. But this was just a professional win by the Saints. Jesse Wardlaw again continuing having a great year. Tiana Smith out of the midfield was absolutely cracking in this game. They're getting just enough to get things done. The Saints team battling for finals. They get the 4 points that they needed.
Yeah, exactly.
Alrighty, we'll move on to what most would say is the shocker of the round. A 16-14 win by the Melbourne Demons at Norwood Oval in Adelaide. This one shocked me. I remember sitting down, and unfortunately, I was spoiled for this one. I woke up and unfortunately saw the score and went, What? Like, I double takes, could not believe what I saw. So I sat down and I watched this game and just the physicality of this game that for some weird reason the kryptonite of the Adelaide Crows is the Melbourne Demons. I mean, what is going on? The D's have been woeful this year compared to years before. And the Crows just, I mean, unfortunately, they're going to look at that 8 behinds, 1-8, and absolutely kick themselves because this was 4 points that got away.
Yeah, well, like you said, like the inaccuracy just really punished the Crows, and like they did the same thing last week. Like unfortunately they just weren't able to capitalize on the amount of inside 50s they had. And I'm pretty sure like the goals were all happened or at least for the teams in the first quarter, and that was sort of the last we saw of it. And then they just had to hold that up for the rest of the game, and which they did impressively. But Crows just left it a little too late and tried to really, go back on that attacking form the last quarter, like they had nothing to lose, where they pretty much had, you know, their sort of reputation to lose in a way. And you still got, Ebbs Marinoff absolutely working her ass off and just, yeah, racking up those fantasy points like no tomorrow. But I think aerially, You got the likes of like Caitlin Gould, who's usually quite good up there. Just, wasn't quite nailing it. And yeah, they just really struggled with the inaccuracy. So yeah, it was a bit frustrating to watch, that's for sure. And it would have been like it was at Norwood Oval, it looked like an absolutely cracking night for some footy, but just unfortunately, just Adelaide's dominance, like they were dominating for the rest of after, Melbourne's purple patch in the first quarter, but they just, the scoreboard was just not showing it in the end. And yeah, that really sort of punished them. Obviously, we'll talk about their game later in the week, how they responded with that. But yeah, I think that was a big kick in the guts for Adelaide.
I mean, that second quarter, you have four opportunities, and if two of them go through, they win this game. Like it's literally how simple it is. And I know, again, it's very easy sitting on your couch eating Cheetos, coach. I know. You stay with me here, but this is one of those things that has really got me. It really gets me sometimes about this Adelaide Crow side is that there are games they let opponents that are inferior to them stay in games if they let them have some confidence early, and it rattles the Crows. I don't know what it is. Again, this is a experienced Crows side. There's some super talents on it. Some ladies that I think every single team in the competition would gladly trade their first round pick this year to have an Ebony Marinoff, an Ann Hatchard, a Caitlin Gould on their squad, and there's something that just doesn't click, and I don't know what it is. Again, Ed Marinoff again through the center was absolutely magnificent. Unfortunately, her companion in arms, Anne Hatchard, unfortunately was a little wayward a couple of times in that second quarter, and that again, two of them go straight, and this is a win. Melbourne get their season back on track with a massive win that I think a lot of people had chalked up to the losing column, and it puts them right back in the chance for finals. And as you said, all they need is two goals. And then they played good enough defensive footy to be able to win the game with a little bit of help by Adelaide. So this is a cracking game of football. Again, I don't look at the score in games like this. I look at the physicality. I look at the structure on these teams. Both teams play really good defensive football. Both just I look at it as one team didn't capitalize when the other did on their opportunity. So the Crows, I said, they bounce back. We later on in the game, they get the perfect opponent to bounce back to, but this is one of those Adelaide will be kicking themselves a lot because of that particular score. Could that cost them a top four side? Potentially, we'll have to see. It'll be interesting. So we'll stay in South Australia the next night over to Alberton Oval under the lights as the Port Adelaide Power take on the Collingwood Magpies and get an 8-point win, 33-25. This was a great game of footy. I know Collingwood is dealing with a bunch of injuries. They've had play on players, but Collingwood had a good old-fashioned crack, and they darn near stole 4 points away from Port Adelaide. But I gotta give my shout outs. Matilda Schultz, you absolute superstar. The Specky was magnificent. I had to watch it probably 3 or 4 times. And my favorite part still is her facial expression when she realizes she just potentially took Mark of the Year, and she goes, "Oh my God," as she's falling towards the ground was absolute gold.
Yeah, it's safe to say she would have been pretty stoked with that. No, what a good kid, like what a superstar. Really cool to see her excel. I had heard that it was something she's been wanting to work on, was her contested marking and all that, being the giant that she is. But I just think it was really good. It wasn't just a big jump. Like she even got a little second lift, and I get really excited when you see some speckies and they just get that second lift to get up and about. So yeah, it's really good for her that she's got a nice big shining light on her. And so she should, because she's a great player. She's very versatile ruck. Um but yeah, then you've got um her teammates, and Abby Dowrick had a great game that she was passing it off to. But yeah, like um Collingwood had a good cock crack, and it's, considering, they've only won I think a game this year, they're 1-7.
Mhm.
Um, it was good that they showed some fight, and then Michaela Cand was working her butt off as well. She had a fair few tackles to her name. But you also see, the likes of Piper Window, who's she's in and amongst that draft group of the young talent that they have. And I wouldn't say, you've got people like Shania Goodies like excelling, getting those Rising Star awards and Molly Brooksby, but it's good that Piper's in there doing all the hard stuff, which is really good to see. But yeah, and then Port's just got a good range of they've got goal scorers that have gone, they've spread that out a bit. Like you had Caitlin Wendland score one, and then Josie scored one as well, with Matilda Schultz and Gemma leading from the forward line as well with her incredible goal of the year. So it was good to, it was just a really exciting game. It had a bit of everything. And yeah, that third quarter in particular with Matilda and Gemma putting on a show would have been really entertaining to be in amongst that crowd. So yeah, it was just it's good to see that Port with their talent they have, they're becoming a fairly decent side wanting to attack that footy. And yeah, I really enjoyed watching this game. It was great.
Yeah, to see the youngsters on this Port team succeeding, Shanae Goody looking fantastic on the wing. Molly Brooksby, I think, has taken that back pocket spot and been absolutely sensational. I know for all of you girls at Norwood, you're probably so proud of that little ripper. She has been magnificent down back. She's been one of my favorites to watch out of Port Adelaide. I agree with you. I think Piper Window has kind of become that great little third, that little role player in the midfield because you've got Abby Dowrick and you've got some of the stars that Port have. And Piper's just stepped in and she's taken that defensive role and done really, really well. I'm happy for Matilda Schultz. She's been one of my favorite rucks this entire season. Her Mimstrom at Fremantle and Jess Allen of Adelaide, I think have been the three best rucks this year. I'm sitting here thinking about my all Australian team, and those are the three rucks right now that I have in contention for it because I think all three have been playing magnificent football. So this is a Port team again. Like if they don't make finals, if I'm Lauren Arnell, I'm not super angry. I'm a little disappointed because I think you've got some super talent. But I think the fact that you still have Lauren Young to join this group from her ACL injury still to come back, and a full year of Molly Brooksby, Piper Window, Shanae Goody, and some of these youngsters that they already have in the fold getting another year of experience over this offseason going into next season. This is a Port team. They're scary. If they can keep this group together, they could be absolutely scary to watch as the season goes on. We jump to Friday night football. And if you can't tell by the inflection in my voice that this was a game that led to a little bit of controversy because I know my co-host and I, before we turned the mics on, had a nice little discussion because I love Kate McCarthy. I think Kate McCarthy is an absolute character. I think she says what she wants to say. I love that about her. But this was the one time I disagreed with her, and her comment on social media after this game, I think set the league back. And again, I love her to death. She's an incredible. I think she's done magnificently calling footy both for the men and for the women this year. But I just feel that she set up a narrative that is just not good for the competition. Again, I will say this. Was this the greatest game of footy to watch? Absolutely not. Was this a game of footy that everybody wanted to watch? Absolutely not. Was this game worth a Friday night footy slot? Absolutely not. But it's not like these women aren't trying. It's not like these women intentionally. This I put on the coaching staffs. This was where the coaching staffs can ruin the game. And I will say this as a coach, if you're paid to win, you're going to try to win. If you're paid to survive, you're going to try to survive. I don't blame the coaches for doing what they did because they don't want to get embarrassed on Friday Night Football. But that type of football is something that is not going to entertain people. And with the KPIs that the women's league are trying to get for more games, this was not a game that you want on prime time being shown to the world. Steph, I know this is frustrating, and I know that I think you attended this game, correct?
Yeah, well, I was in Melbourne for the weekend, and actually coincidentally enough, it was good timing that my sister Gabby actually umpired this game. She was originally meant to do, well, both games for the scrub in the end. She was going to do the Wednesday night game for Adelaide and Melbourne, but it got changed to this one. And she can say that you know, she enjoyed her own umpiring game rather than the game itself. But I enjoyed supporting the green umpires for this one. That's probably who I was going for. But yeah, it's just unfortunate that yeah, it's prime time coverage and being at the ground was actually really it's funny you say like it was a crap game to watch, but if you were there, it's so much different to seeing it on TV.
Mhm.
Because Essendon's, they're wanting to play a really fast game, just weren't quite able to execute and stuff. But that's because, Bulldogs were in the game plan, like we said, their coaches or whatever their coaching strategy is, they're not playing to win games, they're just playing not to concede as much. So they had all those extra defenders going in their defensive 50, which were Essendon were absolutely dominating, just getting it inside 50. And they had nailed some really good balls inside, but just, Bulldogs are playing a brand of footy at the moment where they just don't want to get absolutely smashed by teams. And it's not a great look um, for women's football at the moment, of what we're trying to promote, what brand the AFLW is actually trying to create. But being at that game, because it was Pride Round and everything, Whitten Oval was an immaculate facility and immaculate ground. Me and my mate went on the ground afterwards. It was just like red carpet. It was just like, I just want to run on this. Um, I would happily tear my hammy again just to sprint on that ground. Um, so yeah, the positive I got out of that was the atmosphere itself was actually incredible. Um, but yeah, unfortunately, just, you know, there could have been a really good game of footy if, Bulldogs were able to take risks, have nothing to, their season's over. They have nothing to lose. Just have fun, be crafty and try and experiment stuff. Like, just try get some exciting football out there while you've got the, opportunity to just try something a lot craftier, you know, just attack it. But nah, they're just there to just sort of stop the game plan of Essendon. And but yeah, Don's got the job done. They came out winning all their games in this condensed fixture. So we can sort of talk about how this scrappy this game is, but Essendon can come out of this thinking, we've won this and everyone can have a whinge, we'll get over it eventually. So yeah.
Mhm. No, see here's the thing. Like I said, that's the part that was the most frustrating about it. Like if Kate McCarthy doesn't say anything, I don't think this gets as much publicity. Again, the Dons did what they need to do. Again, I don't fault the Dons for doing what they did. Like I said, what is frustrating is that I think as much as the Western Bulldogs were trying to save face, they're actually setting themselves back. They're not gaining anything from this year. Like I feel for Elaine Grigg, who I think has been magnificent despite how her team has been playing. I think Katie Lee Western Turner again, being a forward, you are kind of hamstrung to how your midfield does. And if your midfield's getting themselves pantsed and the ball is going to the other side of the field, there's not much you can do as a forward. So I don't blame Katie Lee Western Turner. Like I don't blame her. Brooke Barwick has come in. I think she's done decently. I think again she's running into avalanches most weeks because they're severely outmatched in the midfield talent wise. Now that unfortunately with Ellie Blackburn's injured foot and she's out for the season. Deanna Barry's done fantastic. I think Elizabeth Georgia-Stathis has had another magnificent season along the halfback line. But I think again, her stats and her influence on the game has primarily been because the ball is near her a lot more than it is the other side of the field. So I don't blame their coach for doing what they did, but I think she's actually stunting the growth of her youngsters by not letting them experience what could happen. I know it's weird to say. I mean, as you said, the season's over with. The season has been over probably since about round four. Once you lose the first three games of the season, you're pretty much done. Like, let's just be honest. With a small fixture of only 11 games, literally each game is like the equivalency of two. If you lose, it's like losing two in the men's season. I don't like comparing it, but that's just the way it is. One loss is the equivalency of two. They got put behind the eight ball. Have a crack. What are you losing? Like if you get the wooden spoon, you get the wooden spoon. You get the first overall pick. You've already got a youngster talent. You already got an incredible roster of young talent that's going to learn and grow together a little bit like Port Adelaide. Don't be afraid to get a wooden spoon in this situation. Have a crack. Teach your girls to go for it. because you don't know when you might catch somebody off guard. You kick a goal, you get some momentum, and then the group all lifts at the same time. But if you're going to play two behind the football, three behind the football to keep from scoring, you've basically literally stunted the growth of the group. So I that's more of my thing. I don't blame Essendon for this particular situation. They did what they're supposed to do. Natalie Wood did not change her game plan. It's the fact that that Western Bulldogs literally played not to lose. They took no risks in this game. That's the part that's the most frustrating for me. Again, I don't mind criticizing the tactics. I don't mind criticizing the players. But when you criticize the footy as a whole, like Kate McCarthy did, I think that's a little. I think it brings more negativity to this whole thing that I don't think was necessary. And I think
Yeah,
that's the
she's
part.
igniting a fire that's already,
Yep.
some people would be, especially the keyboard warriors that are against women's footy. She's sort of
Mhm.
encouraging them to, really pounce even more, where she should really be doing the opposite. Or if you've
Mhm.
got a strong opinion like that, that's probably something that needs to be kept in house. But
Yep.
hey, it's getting any attention's good attention for women's footy, I reckon, at this point.
Yeah, I'm not fully on that camp. I get it, but I'm not fully on that camp there. I think in the long run that actually leads to more negative than positive. So you know what, let's jump to a positive situation. I know as the Fremantle supporter, you're going to chuckle at this as the West Coast Eagles fly over to Kinetic Stadium in Hawthorne and absolutely pantsed by a absolutely in fuego Hawthorne Hawks team, 74 to 8, 66-point win by the Hawks. And again, the Hawks look absolutely scintillating. The new coach and the style that the Hawks have been playing this season has been marquee. You have to catch the Hawks game. And their jumper for Pride Round, chef's kiff. Man, is that a gorgeous jumper.
Yeah, I totally agree. I reckon they had the best pride jumper. Like they've done really well with that. Um, but yeah, the Hawks are just they're playing hot ball. Like their brand of footy is just so exciting, so much fun to watch. And that's what Bulldogs should be looking at. You might not be winning games, but just try have some fun footy and start from there and like become Hawthorn because they were an expansion team, like one of the later expansion teams, and look how well they've been going over the last few years. They're just playing some great footy. It's just so exciting to watch. And then you've got like midfielders just scoring goals as well as racking up in the midfield, but then on that, you got Emily Bates scoring goals as well. And it's just,
Mhm.
so much fun to watch. And, the Irish players are just absolutely tearing it apart as well. Like they're just like, I can't say enough how fun they are. And it's always good to see them dominate against West Coast. But also to discuss, like we said offline, they're in a spot where they're playing sort of just middle end teams, so they are able to capitalize on that and absolutely dominate those teams. Um, so for them to go up against teams possibly next year that they're in top end, if they do finish top four, be good to see if they can, back that up and play that brand of footy against great teams in a harder fixture. Um, but yeah, it's just been really, really good to watch. And I think when we did our season preview, we sort of predicted the top four, what it's looking like, and we sort of agreed the same sort of top three teams of North Melbourne, um, Brisbane, and Adelaide was still amongst that top four, but predicted that Melbourne would be the one to drop out and Hawthorn to come in. So that's sort of shaping up quite nicely, that prediction. Um, but yeah, no, it's just I just really enjoyed this game and just made it exciting. So I'm glad this sort of, even though it was a blowout and West Coast, didn't have the greatest of games ever, it was just good to see that brand of footy being on display.
Oh, but this is one of those where it's like West Coast didn't go into a shell and just try to play defense. Like at least I got to give Daisy that. Like I know that
Mm.
they took a whooping. Okay, and that's this is potentially what can happen, but Daisy didn't pull him back and put him behind. They let them play footy. They're going to learn from this. This is still a West Coast team. They've got some youngsters. They're going to take their growing pains. And this is a Hawks team that just they play kinetic so well. As you said, Eileen Gilroy, Anya McDonough, both looking absolutely magnificent. Jazz Fleming out of the midfield. M. Bates kicks 2 goals in this game. Liza West again continuing to show why she's one of the best pickups of this last offseason. And then you get great on the defensive side. I know, yes, they put up 74 points, but Jenna Richardson has been magnificent for them down back. They've Mattia Breed has done well. This is a Hawks team. They're playing really good footy. Like I said off mic, and you kind of mentioned it there, is that the Hawks are kind of benefiting from what Sydney benefited from last year. A very favorable schedule. You're playing really good football against some not so great teams. They're going to win. They're going to make finals. When they make finals will be the biggest thing, is that will be kind of the reality check for this Hawks team of where they genuinely are at. I think they'll be competitive. I don't know if they're in the same realm as the Norse, the Brizzies, the Adelaide, and the Adelaides just yet. But this is great for the confidence of the group. It's going to be so much. It's going to be so much fun to watch this Hawks team as the season goes on. How they do in finals. I think they again. I think they'll make top four. Whether they survive, they could be one of those that I kind of look at and go potentially be a straight sets team, just because I think they may get into a place where they're going to be playing two really good teams, and it might give them a little bit of a reality check. But it's so much fun to watch this team. They just have a crack, they get after it, and as you said, Hawkball has kind of taken over the club. It's been magnificent. I mean, the group selfie after the wins are kind of something that I always get a kick out of on social media, that I see that. So it's a lot of fun. But to see some of these young superstars, and then some of their veterans, Caitlin Ashmore has kind of had a revamp of her career there, which has been magnificent to see. So it's a fun this Hawks team. They're going to be one of the teams that I will watch with a lot of intrigue going forward. So another team that I have loved for the last 2 seasons, and I'm starting to see why I love them so much more that everybody is seeing, and that is the Richmond Tigers, as they get a big win over the Geelong Cats at the Swinburne Center, 46-39. And I mean, the three-headed monster of Ellie McKenzie, Mon Conti, and Grace Egan are showing why I could not wait to see these three rippers all together. And when Katie Brennan is healthy, Caitlin Greiser is healthy, and Amelia Yassir has a game of her life, kicking three in this one. And this is where I feel horrible for the Cats, because this is a Cats team, talent wise. Look at this list on paper. This should be a finals team. And they are looking more and more likely of missing finals this year after, unfortunately, another loss.
Yeah, this was also like another game I got to go to, and the atmosphere was absolutely incredible. It was a nice, believe it or not, I actually got sunburned in Melbourne, which was just like so random. That's sort of unheard of, really. Definitely copped that 4 seasons in one day for the one season they have of summer during that time of the day. But yeah, Richmond are just so
All right, now that transatlantic internet has decided to right itself, unfortunately, Steph had a moment of freeze there, but unfortunately, so we'll go right back to it. So after your sunburn, well, I think is right about where we lost you. So again, well, I'll let you go right back to it. Sorry about
yeah. No, all I really said is that I got sunburned in Melbourne. That's the round done. Cool. Good. Nice to see you. Good night, everyone. Nah. Yeah, I was just saying Richmond, a really good team to watch, in the fact that they seem really orientated and they click really well. Their transitions go well, and they've just got a really good captain in Katie Brennan, that, she doesn't have to be the big hero all the time, but it seems that she ends up being a hero, especially with that ceiling goal at the end. So she stepped up really well. And then, Monconti's always dominating and stuff. But yeah, this year was just an absolutely exciting machine with the goals that she scored. It was just a really good surge. And it was just a good even battle from both the teams as well. They it sort of at one point went from goal to goal, or a couple goals one end and then a couple goals the other end. I think it was just a really good, even contested battle in everything. But even you've got Richmond had a game plan of, even the defenders were pushing up on the 50, really pushing that attacking mode. And then you had girls like Sheeran like even scored a goal in sort of the last quarter, just, that's the work of their defense really surging. And I think that's what got them over the line is just the risk of having quite an attacking football mindset of pushing those defenders closer up to the 50, which allowed Geelong to be a little bit more under pressure and to lock them in the attacking 50 zone. So, it was a great day in Melbourne to watch that game. It was absolutely pumping. And Richmond also, I think they're second best with their pride round Guernsey. I just like that they've kept the sash and made it quite simple, but it's quite like nice, like
Mhm.
quite a nice Guernsey, I reckon.
Yeah, there was a lot of ripping pride round Guernseys that I thought were absolutely magnificent. And just a quick shout out since I had the absolute pleasure of chatting with Elise Sharon, a late happy birthday to her. And she kicks what I think could be goal of the round with that snap from near the boundary was absolutely insane. So huge shout out
She's
to
a weapon.
her. But this was just I agree with you. This was just a fun game. This was a fun game to watch. Again, KB again has led this Richmond team so well. They've played such good football. They're going to be an exciting team to watch. They could be kind of the dark horse outside of the top four that I think could be the team to keep an eye on because if they catch a team just right, they could be absolutely dangerous. So that'll be a fun one. I feel for the Cats here again. I think their fixture is absolutely killing them. This is a
Yeah.
finals probably should be team. This is a top four side potentially that just they're running into buzzsaws at the wrong time. So again, I feel bad for the Cats. Most likely, I don't know if they'll make finals or not, which is kind of a travesty. Again, it's the one issue I have with the 11 rounds is that you can get behind the eight ball very, very quickly if things do not go your way. So let's jump up to Brighton Homes Arena and the Queensland Derby, the Q Clash, and the Lions continue their undefeated streak in that, continuing to roll right along with a 16-point win, 44-28. I mean, just you could just roll off a name off this Brisbane Lions team and be accurate on this. Taylor Smith kicking two goals. Ali Anderson again racking up the disposal. Sophie Conway going forward and kicking goals. Dakota Davidson having a nice game herself. And defensively sound, Bree Conan, Nat Grider, Jen Dunn, Poppy Bolts. This entire defense has looked absolutely magnificent. The Suns, I feel bad for them. They're doing everything they can. They just can't buy a win at this point.
Nah, and that's like a good example of, teams that, probably obviously aren't going to win games like this, but at least they're putting up a good contest and matching it. And Taya scoring those goals in that first quarter was really exciting. Watching them were really, I think it was only their third game of AFLW. And just put on, and the goals that they scored were really actually quite exciting. Like kept kind of, she was under some, they were under some pressure. With their second goal, like on the run, was able to capitalize on that. And first goal that they got it was just really good to watch, seeing a kid like that excel in the very short amount of time that they've played footy. But yeah, you've just got an absolutely packed, hard working Brisbane team that are just going to go out on top. And then I've just got I'm the biggest fangirl of Belle Dawes. Like I was really stoked that, she got
Mhm.
recognized for her game, which, yeah, just an absolute weapon. Yeah, I love that girl so much. I just can't harp on about her enough, and I won't because I could talk forever about it. But yeah, it was just another game that at least it was the Suns did show a really good fight, and I'm glad that they are. And considering the only points that they've scored this season is from a draw, they've actually not won a game, which
Mhm.
is hard, which I don't believe is deserving of their efforts in some of their games compared to like the Western Bulldogs.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's a shame for how their season's going and stuff. And I knew they were sort of going to drop off a bit considering they lost a lot of players this year. But yeah, Brisbane, they're a hard team to beat, and I think it was still enjoyable to watch it. It wasn't the worst game to watch this round, that's for sure.
it was a lot of fun. And again, again, the Suns a lot like the Cats. It's the issue is that their fixture is absolutely hurting them because they've lost a couple of games they probably shouldn't have. They had that draw against Carleton where they probably should have won. So
Yeah.
it's just, this is a Gold Coast Suns team that they've been nipped by results. They haven't had the injury totals that some of the teams have had, but they've faced some teams that just catch them at just the right time and get the win. I applaud their effort. They're throwing in some of their youngsters. I know a couple of their academy girls got their debuts in this game, and I didn't think they looked out of place at all. Again, this Brisbane team, they're just magnificent. Belle Dawes is one of those. I agree with you. Like, you can't not watch her because she just finds a way to the football. She isn't the Allie Anderson get 35 disposals. She'll get 20 and she makes an impact. She kicks goals. She does the little things. She tackles really aggressively. She gets after it. And it's just such a good team. They're so deep. They're so talented. Starcevich can move the magnets around whatever way he wants. This is a Brisbane team that they're going to be dangerous come finals time because they run with anybody. There's not a team in the competition that can run as much as this Brisbane Lions team. So it'll be fascinating to see this team progress further, jump out to Fremantle Oval. And I know this is probably not one that my co-host would want to chat about, as unfortunately, her beloved Frio Dockers, who I think have played some really good football, absolutely get nipped at the death by the Carlton Blues by 34-30. I mean, this has got to be gutting for Fremantle because you win this game, you're almost sewn up a final spot.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like I said, like this was a sort of nipping losing against the Hawks last week. It was sort of a game they both really needed to win, and then Dockers really needed to respond this game to, still show their fight, like they're worthy of being in the top eight and stuff. And to lose to a team against Carlton, who haven't been the great playing the greatest footy ever, they showed up and actually played some decent footy and just matched it. And to keep Dockers scoreless in the last quarter just really stung. It's really disappointing to see. But that's just never knows. Could be because of the condensed fixture. But I always really liked. I thought we were on for a bit of a rollout when Ebbs Antonio scores the first two goals and
Hmm.
becomes a bit of an excitement machine. But then Carlton come back and actually respond, and I'm just like, oh, got a little bit of a game happening here, which is again still exciting for the competition, but as a Freo supporter, it was a bit annoying to see. But and there's also only so much that Emma Driscoll can do when she just absolutely stood up in that second or third quarter. Just I don't think there was any goals scored in that second quarter, but she just was just marking every ball that was going inside 50, and shows why she's an All-Australian defender. But Mim Strong's always dominant as always, but the cut like Shearer was really great. Maddie Guerin was just unbelievable as well. And they were doing some those sort of good hard players that haven't been really getting recognised for their games because their team hasn't been great, haven't been winning games. They were able to showcase what they're capable of in a really good game of footy in the end.
Hmm. No, it was one of those crazy ones. Like Aisling McCarthy coming over from West Coast has been great for Fremantle. This was a midfield battle. Like, you had some absolute superstars getting after it in this game. I feel gutted for the Dockers because again they for the most part were the better team for most of the day, but Carlton just they did just enough. Bree
Yeah.
Moody kicks a goal in this game, and like Carlson they just did. This is the issue that I have with the condensed fixture it has thrown some spanners into this finals. You have some results that you look and it makes you kind of go, huh? Like Melbourne losing to Adelaide, and that's not a diss to Adelaide. It's just that it is not a result that you saw coming. There have been several results that you kind of look and they make you scratch your head, and this was one of those where you go into it going, well, Fremantle should win this. They've played the better footy. They haven't had the issues. Like Carlton has had this issue where I think they've been too tall. They've lost a little bit of pressure because of the fact they had both Moody sisters and Jess Good. Well, that's three rucks in the side. That takes a little bit of the speed away from your game. So for them to take 4 points out of the West was quite the accomplishment. I don't think the Dockers are sitting here hitting panic stations. They're not hitting the panic button and the red lights aren't flashing. But this one hurts because this was 4 points that could have been very, very helpful for them when it comes to finals positioning. This puts them in a little bit more limbo with 3 games left to go. But again, Carlton, we'll give you your chocolates. Congratulations, Fremantle. Again, don't lower your heads. I think those ladies played a magnificent game of football. The bounce just didn't go their way in the end. So we'll jump down to Tasmania. And yes, I
Not
sat
one
through
that
this.
you enjoy.
Yes, I sat through this, ladies and gentlemen, but I will sit here and say this, and this is not Red Hat Dottie saying this. This score is a little bit misleading. This score is very misleading because if you look at the statistics and you watch this game from start to finish, there were times that Sydney absolutely hemmed North in their own end. The issue is that Sydney's bulk of their scoring was in the first quarter when they decided to play table tennis back and forth. Goal North, goal Sydney, goal North, goal Sydney, goal North, goal Sydney. It was 3-3 after about 15 minutes of the first quarter, and I went, North is just going to literally just let Sydney use so much energy out in these first few quarters, key being in that North will just absolutely fly come home the second half. And for the most part, Sydney stayed in this game, but it was the finishing by North that got them because they would hem North in, it would repel, it would come back in, it would repel, it would come back in. And then finally, one repel would hit a target, and then North was off to the races. And Sydney's defense had pushed up so much to keep the ball inside 50. They got out the back, North kicked a goal. And that's literally the difference. Yes, this is a 10-goal game. But yeah, it's a 10-goal game. But Sydney was in this. Sydney, if they could have kicked straight a couple of their kicks mid-second quarter and kept it within 2 goals, I think this could have been a much closer game. I'm proud of the Sydney team. No Ali Morfitt, no Chloe Malloy, no Laura Gardner. I think they played really well. Monham was back, but on limited minutes. She wasn't going through the midfield as much. Sydney, again, the results suck, absolutely. But I like what I'm seeing. Scott Gowans, again, it's kind of the contradictory of earlier in this game. He has not taken away from what he wants to do, from what he wants his team to do. They are continuing to attack, they're continuing to get after it. Is it hurting them a little bit going out the back? Absolutely. But in the long run, these girls are learning that this is the style of footy we want to play, and he can make adjustments from there. I'm proud of what Scott Gowans has done. North, I'll applaud you. Applaud you. You are the cream of the crop. You are the best team in the competition right now. If you don't win the premiership, I will be thoroughly disappointed. Not because I tipped you at the start of the year, but because you have looked fantastic. Libby Birch has been a perfect addition to this defense. You already were really good defensively. You add Libby Birch, which only gives you a bunch of depth. This is a fun North team to watch. I really want them to win a championship. Damn it, Jazz Garner better freaking win the best and fairest this year because she has been sensational kicking 3 goals in this game. She was absolutely electric. Tanya Kennedy has been one of the best taggers in the league, and she got 3 goals with a Tanya Kennedy tag. Those two were fun to watch get after it because there was a little bit of argy bargy between the two of them, and I loved it because neither got dirty. It was physical. They pushed each other. They bumped each other. They got after it. They tackled each other. I think they probably tackled each other probably 15 times apiece. But it was fun
Yeah.
to watch. All due respect to North, again, such a good side. They show why they're one of the best teams in the competition. But I'm proud of my Swans. I know it's a 10-goal loss, but I'm proud. I think they did not disappoint me. They didn't roll over. They kept getting after it. They had a crack. You lose by 10 goals to North. That is not a bad thing with as good a North team as it is with the injuries that Sydney had. Again, I know it's no excuse. Every team has got injuries in some way. But Sydney had a crack. Sophia Hurley, I think, has been magnificent this season. I've loved watching her play. Again, tough one for the scoreboard, but I'm proud of the Swans team because they gave it a red hot crack. They just fell a little short.
Yeah, exactly. And that, given their circumstances with injuries and everything like that, yeah, I'm proud of them as well, considering they've played against a team that are probably going to be the premiers this year. And that the thing was they actually matched like their inside 50s. I'm pretty sure it was very even across that board. It's just,
Like
yeah,
three. It was
North were able to
insane.
capitalize and they were a bit more efficient in it. So it was just, yeah, like you said, it was ping pong coming out of Sydney's 50. But when um, North were they had the opportunity, they just were able to nail it. So nah, Sydney definitely put up a good fight against a very good team. So there was still, yeah, it's all about footy.
I pulled it up. They actually Sydney actually won inside 50s by one.
Oh, well, there you go. So
32-31. That's, I mean, that just shows you where the difference was. And then efficiency inside 50 is definitely the telling tale. 61.3% for North, 28.1% for Sydney.
no,
That
yeah,
was
well, there you go.
literally it. Hit outs, you're facing Emma Keem and Kim Rainey. They only lost by 11. Clearances, they got beat by seven. Clearances, they got beat by 17. Center clearances was 9-6. What really got him was the stoppage clearance. It was the stoppage clearances. They lost by four. They lost by 14. Contested possessions was within 20. Uncontested possessions. There were a few chains that North had uncontested wise that really did it there. So it's like I don't. Again, you look at the statistics. They weren't. If you look at a 10 goal game, you'd think that most of these statistics would be vastly on the north side. It is relatively closer than I even kind of looked at it like it's kind of crazy how close Sydney was, much closer than I you would expect for a 10 goal game.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. No, they did well. I reckon yeah, they should be proud of what they did, especially traveling to Tassie as well.
Yeah, I mean, but the good thing was is that there was a good chunk of fans even at North Hobart Oval. Those pockets were quite interesting. There's one pocket on the right side of the camera angle that literally it almost looked like a straight line. It
Yeah,
was
it
like
did.
it
It
just
was like Norwood Oval. It was like a soccer pitch.
it was kind of funny. So there was a couple of times the ball went into that pocket. You could definitely tell that they were used to a more rounded pocket because they went for the
Yeah.
lead. They were like, "Uh-oh, a little short there." So it
Yeah.
was again, like I said, North is just so good. They're just so good. They're going to be so much fun. They're going to be so much fun to watch. But I'm proud of the Swans. Again, they gave it a red hot crack. Yes, they lose by six. They lose by 10 goals, but I think they really did. They played. They just played footy, and I have to give them plaudits to that. So we get to it, the last two games of the condensed fixture. First, we see Melbourne get a 14-point win over the St. Kilda Saints, 44-30. The D's are back. That's two in a row, winning both games in this condensed fixture, and they're right back in the hunt for finals again. Uh-oh.
Yeah. Well, it was I guess it makes the top six, I guess, a bit more interesting how it will sort of all form in the next last few games of the season. So it's good to see Melbourne going back on their feet. Because I was almost about to write them off almost for the rest of the season. But yeah, you got Katie Hoare McNamara and Eliza McNamara. I can't even say her name. Whatever.
The
She's a
tongue
weapon.
twister. Dun, 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 dun.
Can't say names. But yeah, they were just Melbourne's midfield were just dominant. That's sort of what won them the game, I reckon, in the end. Even though like the positive for Saints is, they were accurate. Like they just got the 5 goals straight. And their kicking efficiency is actually like quite good, trying to work it around the ground again. But yeah, Melbourne were they just had a bit more fire in their belly, especially in the midfield. So they yeah, found a bit of spark in them, and that would certainly be a confident boost for them going into the next few games, which I think will be pretty tough for them. But definitely the confidence boost they need, especially in this condensed fixture where a lot of teams will be burnt out, like all of them will be burnt out. But I think something that's really important coming out of the condensed fixture is consistency and confidence.
Mhm. No, 100% with you. Like I pulled up the ladder because I wanted to see. I mean, technically by points wise, they're tied for eighth. They're right there.
Oh, there
What's
you go.
killing them right now is their percentage. Their percentage is absolutely woeful, 68.4. Because
Oh, yeah,
that's
rubbish.
what's gonna unfortunately, this is one of those where North Melbourne's gotta win out and hope the teams around them, the West Coast, the Port Adelaides, the St. Kildas, the Carltons, the Geelongs, just don't win because they cannot afford anybody to be even with them because percentage wise, they're just it's not there unless they can get an absolute hammering of somebody and rock it up to percentage wise. So they're in the fight, but right now they've got to have a little bit of help. But again, you're there, so anything's possible. St. Kilda, you're sitting there, and almost if you're Nick Del Santo, you're going, dear God, not again, dear God, not again, because the same thing happened last year. They're right around this area. They lost a couple of games late, and it cost them because they lost. They did not make finals by percentage. So this is one of those. I'm this hurts. This hurts the Saints. This really does because this is a game that if you look at it the way the season had been going, Melbourne, hey, we've got a chance to beat Melbourne. Melbourne's not playing as well, and Melbourne gets a lot of confidence coming out of that Adelaide game. And St. Kilda, unfortunately, they ran into a hot midfield that just did enough to get everything done. So it's going to be fun to watch these two teams because two different trajectories. St. Kilda struggling a little bit against some of the better sides, and Melbourne kind of maybe finding their groove a little bit. It'll be fascinating to watch. And then jumping up to Henson Park up in Sydney, and unfortunately, Adelaide just too good. Giants unfortunately run into an absolute buzzsaw as the Adelaide Crows put a whooping by 64, 92, 28. Eb Marinoff, I think, has 41 in this one. Like I said, the fantasy owners of Eb Marinoff are cheesing big time as they get two absolutely magnificent games by that ripper. And the Crows kind of get some confidence back after being knocked down just a notch by the D's earlier in the round.
Yeah, I think this game is quite beneficial for the Crows in the fact that it might not, even though the scoreboard will say differently, like they definitely dominated, but there were still a few scrappy moments that I believe they still need to work on. But that's something they can learn in their review while they have a full week of training on the track now that the condensed fixtures done. But yeah, Marinoff just absolutely tearing it apart. And then people, like you mentioned before with Jess Allen being all Australian form, I don't think people realize how efficient she actually is when she does have the ball and with her hit outs and everything. Like she set up a lot of goals that were deep inside 50 that were taken out of the ruck, which allowed, Danielle Ponto and Caitlin Gould to do what they do best in scoring their goals in there. And then so they sort of did a similar thing with Richmond with pressing their defense. They were able to um, press their defense up and have people like Sarah Goodwin actually have a crack at goals, and then Stevie Lee got a goal in there at the end as well. So yeah, GWS were just always under the pump with Adelaide always just dumping it in deep inside their forward 50. So yeah, I think this is a very beneficial game for Adelaide in the fact they dominated, but they also have a lot of learnings and things to tidy up on going into the rest of the season.
Then it gives a nice little percentage boost too, because you're a
Absolutely.
game back. But if you get lucky in a Hawthorn or a Brisbane stumble, your percentage looks really, really good going into it. So it's one of those percentage boosters that will help you as the season goes on. So that's it. The condensed fixtures are over. I'm going to stop talking about it. Well, kind of, not really, because we'll jump to the burning questions. And conveniently, Coach, you are reading your script really well, as the first question I have is about the condensed fixtures. So let's get this out of the way. Let's have our fun. I will probably pull out my soapbox at the end of this. So I'll ask this stuff. The condensed fixtures are over. Is this something you think should continue? I'm going to let that drift off into the ether because I know the answer already. Or should we scrap it and just add more rounds?
Well, yeah, I think we can definitely predict what I'm going to say. I haven't heard or met anyone that agrees that it's a great idea to roll that out next year again. Yeah, more rounds just need to be added. The thing is, you can't knock something until you try it. So they've tried it. Unfortunately, more bad. Well, I wouldn't say bad, but um, not a lot of positives have come out of it, that's for sure. But definitely something that they have tried and probably shouldn't bring back again. And yeah, just it's a good sort of, I guess, if you want to look at it positively, allowed the girls to sort of, have a bit of resilience in their mental and physical game, and just sort of see how, the standard of footy would go. And unfortunately, a few more injuries probably came out of that as well. But yeah, gotta get rid of that shit. Not doing that anymore. Excuse my French.
It's fine. Hey, I appreciate it because I am exactly the same way with you on this one. It needs to be scrapped because I just don't feel that it was. I get it. You want to get more games in while putting the least amount of effort in. I will be very honest. Okay, grab your soapbox, coach, put it underneath you. Here we go. AFL House has continued, as I've said many, many a time, they continue to show that they are treating this AFLW competition like we're just doing this to appease the girls. We're just doing this to appease the girls. Okay. We really don't care. Like, let's just be honest. Like, they're never going to say it. Like, they're gonna hire somebody. Like, we're trying to do what's best for the women's game. We're trying to improve the women's game. We're trying to make it better. We're trying bull, bull if you were, you wouldn't be fixturing the fixture the way you are. I get it. Okay. You're trying to do it on suburban grounds. Is it as easy? No, I get that. But come on. We are not stupid. We can all see by the fixturing and by the times that you're playing these games, you give zero shits about this competition. You are literally doing this to shut them up. Let's just be honest. Let's take this with a grain of salt, ladies and gentlemen. That's the way it is. If you schedule a game at 4:30 in the afternoon at the Swinburne Center or in Casey, people are not going to be able to go on a Friday afternoon. Let's just be honest, okay? Play the games in prime time or stop telling us that you're trying to progress the women's game because you're not doing it. You are not. I'm sorry, AFL House. I'm going to tell you it straight. I'm going to be blunt about it. I want these women to be successful, and they cannot be successful when you're telling them do this, but then you're literally putting a wall in front of them and telling them that it's glass and it's easy to get through. It's not going to happen, okay? You are literally stopping the momentum of this competition. Do I understand that people are like, well, let's just play double headers between the men and the women? No, no. Okay. I get why people want to do that. But the men's fans and the women's fans are a completely different group. And until people at AFL House and even some of the players need to understand that, because I keep hearing some of the players go, well, I think it would be a good idea. It's a great idea in theory, but what you're forgetting is that there's a different aspect to the men's game that the women's game doesn't have. Okay. There's hundreds of years of fandom in the men's game. It's not there yet for the women. Okay. It's not. We have to be honest with ourselves. We have to tell ourselves the truth. You cannot play curtain raisers with the women. You cannot. Because if you want this competition to not be seen as the redheaded stepchild of the AFL, then you can't do it. That's just the honest truth, okay? If you do it, you might as well just tell the AFLW players you are never, ever, 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 ever going to get what the men get. That's just going to be the truth. If you play them as curtain raisers, the women will always continue to be a second class looked at competition. You have to keep them separate as much as possible. Is the fixture perfect? No. Will the fixture ever be perfect? No. Why? Because you will never get free air no matter what you try. You will never get it because the men's competition has taken up so much of the calendar that it will never happen because and this is a utopian thought and I've said this before, Steph. So this might be a little bit new. I've said the perfect way to do this would be to cut the men's season back to 18 games. 18 games, okay? You play everybody once and you play one rival twice. So you get your Richmonds, you get your Richmond, you get your Hawthorne Geelong, you get your Collingwood Carlton, you get your GWS Sydney, you get your Queensland the Q Clash, you get the Western Derby, you get the showdown in South Australia. You get two of those, but everybody else you play once. Then you do the finals, and then the women's season starts, and it's the same thing. You play everybody once, and you get
Mhm.
your second game against your rival twice. I think you could figure out a season with both the men's and the women's, and they play 18 regular season games and then a finals, and I think you could fit it in. The problem is that as at this present point, the women's season is 11 and the men's season is 24.
Yeah,
It's
okay, interesting. You know what? And some of the blokes would probably be open to that as well, so they can still earn a bucket of money for less games. So they'll probably be like, "Yeah, we get less of a
mhm,
season. Like, you know,
yep,
they can have a bit more of a rest. Like less. Their season actually drags out a lot as well because it's a long season. There's
mhm,
about three different buys in there as well,
mhm,
so that sort of extends it out at the same time as well. So
yep.
even to condense the men's a little bit would be somewhat ideal, but you have
It's
to
a
remember the
it's a
AFL is a business and they don't know how to brand the AFLW or how they want to
mhm.
identify it, which is really frustrating to see.
Yep. Like I said, it's a utopian thought, but it'll never happen. Why? Because the broadcasters want the men's game because the men's game brings the money. And again, I'm not saying this because I agree with it. I'm saying it's because that's what they've told us. They've told us the men's game brings in the money. So that's the problem.
Yeah.
Again, it will never happen. I know it will never
Nope.
happen as much as I want it to, because like I said, it would be the perfect situation because it cuts 6 rounds off the men's. You put those 6 rounds onto the women's. Now you have 17. All you have to do is finagle a couple of games. And if you have that pre-finals bye in the men's, you could still do it. And what you could do is that make sure that the women's games aren't played on grand final day, so you have grand final day gets its free to air. You gets its free air. Doesn't have to worry about any of the women's games. The women's games can play around it. And then the women's season, for the most part, is in free air. It doesn't have to worry about it. And you can get some games on the MCG, at Marvel Stadium, at the Adelaide Oval, at Optus Stadium, at the SCG. You could play games in the bigger stadiums because look at that in October in early September, their season would already be over because they've played
Mhm.
18 games. Yes, you'd get a grand final in the middle of winter. So who knows weather-wise how that would be come grand final day. But it would open up more rounds to let the women have it. Or what you do is you flip the seasons and you play the men's in July and you play the women's in the start of March. It's a
Yeah,
thought. It's like I said, I don't know how the women would enjoy the middle of the winter season, but that's what I mean. I you can do it, but
yeah,
unfortunately, like I said, the juggernaut that is the money is what's going to
funny.
get it over with. Like I said,
Yeah,
eventually, this is this is this is how I see it potentially. This is how I see it playing out. And I don't want this, but this is exactly how I see this playing out. Is that the AFL House has already said that they will get the girls to 14 games by 2027. So in the next 2 years, it's going to go up. All that basically is going to happen is that the women's season is just going to get further into the men's, which means that the first 6 or 7 rounds are basically going to be covered up by the men's end of home and away. That's just the way it's going to go. Okay.
yeah,
They're going to get that they're probably going to get that luxury of the season of that gap with the pre-finals bye for the men is going to be around 3 or 4 that you're going to get free air. You're going to lose it during the finals again between rounds 5 and 7, and then you're going to get 8 through 14, 6 rounds basically free to air before you get to the finals, which is fine. But again, you're losing half of the season to the men's competition and the juggernaut that is that. And you've already got the issue of trade radio, as you and I were discussing off mic. Trade radio is kind of taking up a lot of talk right now. It's not like I'm seeing Kane Corns or any of these great AFL minds talking about AFLW during now. No, they're talking about Dan Houston not making up his mind and Carlton and Collingwood playing footsies and not being able to decide who and how gets Dan Houston and how that all is going to work out. So it's just very, very frustrating. I just feel like the women's competition is sitting here in this purgatory because AFL House doesn't want it to progress. All the fans want it to progress that love the sport, that love these women and love the sport. But unfortunately, they're sitting it where it's like, what do they do? Because they want to be able to help these women out and they can't because the fixturing is just absolute crap. Because just the honest to God truth. And then that's the hard part for me personally, is that these women deserve so much more and they're just not getting any help. And that I think that is the part that's the most frustrating. So take my
yeah.
soapbox, toss it back into the corner, calm down. Okay, let's talk about a little bit more fun. So we have three teams who mathematically are pretty much locked into finals. North, Hawthorne, and Brisbane all sit at the top of the ladder with 7 wins and one draw for North and one loss for each of Hawthorne and Brisbane. All technically, I would say, have locked in final spots. Of those three, which do you think has the best path to becoming minor premiers?
Well, relatively, they've all got pretty good runs home. I know the Hawks, I'm pretty sure they got GWS this next game.
Hmm.
And then they've got Melbourne, which could be a test considering that Melbourne is starting to spark up again. And then the last round they've got, I believe, let's see, Richmond. Oh, that could be kind of tough. Like that's, like we said, the Richmond can be sort of like that dark horse sort of team in finals or just before finals even. But North, they're just so dominant that, the teams they'll play are sort of just, the middle-aged teams anyway. Like they've got Essendon this week, and then, they're playing, I believe it is Adelaide, so that could be a test. But my confidence in Adelaide at the moment with how they're executing is probably, they're going to go all over them. It'll be a good test of how they want to play finals footy. I think, Brisbane are just, they've always got that grit towards the end of the season, though. I think what motivates them is finals footy and those close, hard games. I'd really like to see at the end of the day, minor premiership is great. You got an advantage of whatever. But to sort of make top two, I think is either way, the best reward at the end is the grand final. So I think I sort of see North Melbourne taking out the minor premiership, and I hope they back it up with a premiership. But I think they're most likely to get it, even though Hawthorn have probably an easier run. I just believe North are just that good of a team that they're consistently good and will take that all the way through to the end.
Yeah, it's I look at it and like they each have a couple of games that I think are going to test them. Like as you said, the Cats are one of those that you look at them, yeah, they're 13th on the ladder, but the Cats can nip anybody when they want to. So that'll be fun. Um, if you look at it by strength, I'd say Brisbane is probably the one that's sitting in the catbird seat right now because again, the Cats not they have not played as well this season, and they get the Cats, Swans, and Saints the final three games for Brizzy. So you look at it
Yeah.
and you kind of go, well, that's kind of a
Oh,
nice
they probably got the
road
better home.
statistically if you look at ladder wise. But again, the Cats are a tough side. They've pushed Brisbane in the games that they've played them. Hawthorne, I look at it and I go, the GWS is the cheap GWS is the cheapie.
Yeah.
But then you look at it, Richmond is absolutely no pushover, and you get a Melbourne team that knows that they gotta win to make the finals. Uh, Hawthorne, I think, has the road where they have the best chance of going 3-0. But but they also are a team. I look at it and I go, they have two teams that are fighting for finals that are gonna give them a crack. Brisbane, I think, is looking at it where it's like if the Saints stumble early, they could have it to where it's like Brisbane really's toughest game might be the last one against St. Kilda. If they can get by the Cats, I think Sydney they probably should win easily. Again, I think the Swans are kind of they're limping to the finish line. The Swans will give it a crack, but again, at home, I think Brisbane's sitting in the catbird seat with the Hawks right behind it. Adelaide, I mean, North, I'm a little interested on that because a Gold Coast Suns team you probably should smash, but the Crows are a crafty side. This is a team that you beat in the preliminary final last year, but you've struggled sometimes against this Crows side. So can they continue it? And a Dons team that on their day can be quite dangerous. And I think Bonnie Too Good being back makes them that much scarier. So I would
Yeah.
I'll lean towards Brisbane with Hawthorn close in it. I think North, unfortunately, the good thing for them is they have that 2 point little buffer because they only have a draw instead of a loss.
Yeah.
But
That's very true.
I don't think North Melbourne have to win the minor premiers to still be the favorites to win the premiership as long as they're
Yeah.
coming in. like I said, they kind of get that patty cake game against Gold Coast in the last game of the season. So they may even rest a few of their superstars
Yeah.
just to make sure they're cherry ripe come finals time. We'll have to see. So, and conveniently, my script has went off my phone since I'm not paying attention to it. Last but not least, as per usual, since we have a guest host that has a fandom of a team, we'll have to ask this. Fremantle, thoughts on your Dockers? I know it's a tough loss against Carlton, but they're looking pretty solid with a chance to make finals. I mean, are you saying finals or bust in this situation, or if they miss, will you be okay with that?
I wouldn't put a line through them just yet. Considering the run home is actually like pretty decent. The one I'm actually most worried about is the Derby because Eagles haven't won a Derby yet, but they've got a great coach in Daisy now, and they've actually found some form in playing some good footy. Um, to me, at the moment, with Freo's last couple, I'm hoping they can bounce back. But they're sort of on fraud watch for me at the moment against West Coast. I get a little bit nervous about it. I think it's going to be a game. Um, Derby's always great. It's a good rivalry, but I think it's going to be a battle of what coach is going to coach this game well. What are they going to tell their players in this? So you've got a excellent, like Lisa Webb's a really great coach for Freo, but then you've got, a new enemy in Daisy Pearce, who's an excellent footy brain, absolute pioneer of women's footy. It'd be interesting to see what she comes up with against the Dockers in what Freo really need to win in their run home. Because their run home is all should be very winnable games. So after the Derby, I believe it is
GWS, Henson Park.
GWS and Bulldogs, who
Yep.
you've got bottom three teams that they're playing, so they should have an absolute clean sweep dream home run. But I think they have to get over this hurdle of beating their rivalry and this Western Derby and get the bragging rights and have that confidence boost and making sure that your players fit. Not sure if Hayley Miller's coming back into the side. Um, I think they've lacked maybe a little bit of leadership, and maybe that's why they've struggled a little bit. But yeah, Freo, it's hard because I love him a lot, but it's hard when you love a team that you sometimes don't have a lot of faith in as soon as they slip a little bit.
Hmm.
But yeah, yeah, like I said, the now the condensed fixture's over, hopefully they can have a good week on the track, learn from what they've had to deal with the last couple of weeks, and make sure that they, are raring to go against what will be a very, I think, feisty contest against the Eagles. They're going to want to fight back from few nasty losses. And I think they're going to think that Freo is a very gettable team at this point, while, we're kind of a bit vulnerable at the moment. So, yeah, it should be an absolute clean sweep coming to the next 3 weeks to make finals. But I guess I'll just have to nervously sit on the couch after a few beers, I reckon.
You're looking at your fixture. I think you should go through. You should go 3-0. I honestly think you
Yeah.
should go 3-0.
The word should is really hard to
That's why I
say.
say should instead of will. That's why I say
Yeah.
should because again, I agree with you. The Derby games they're always coin flips for me because you just never know the inspiration level. Aisling McCarthy, this will be the first time she'll play West Coast since she's moved over to the purple side of Perth. So it'll be interesting. I just think if you look at it on paper, again, I say on paper, Fremantle should win this. Fremantle should win this. But again, you never know. Daisy Pierce is quite cagey. And the last two, you should win though. If you play decent football, you should win both of those. And I think you make finals, probably bottom five. So you'll get an elimination final and maybe even host an elimination final, which would be fantastic for the club. So we'll have to see on in that one. So I'm looking at my time and going, uh-oh, it's getting closer and closer. And I have to run to work because I think I left
I gotta
my
work.
computer at work. So we
I
will
gotta go to
jump
bed.
to, I know it's getting late for you too. So we'll go really quickly. Team of the week for me. Team of the week for me. We'll start off on the fullback line. Fullbacks Adelaide's Chelsea Bedell and Fremantle's Emma O'Driscoll make the fullback line. The halfback line we see Elizabeth Georgia Stassis of the Western Bulldogs, West Coast Charlotte Thomas, and Fremantle's Laura Pugh. I thought both of those two defenders for Fremantle were fantastic. Thought I'd get them both in. On the wings, we see Bess Keeney of the Essendon Bombers and Carlton's Keely Skepa. In the middle, we see Jazz Garner with her 3 goals from North. Hawthorne's Emily Bates and Richmond's Maud Conti at the ruck. You take mark of the year potentially. You got to be the ruck. Matilda Schultz of the Port Adelaide Power. Half forward line, see Eileen Gilroy of the Hawthorne Hawks, St Kilda's Jess Wardlaw, and North's Alice O'Loughlin. The full forward line sees Amelia Yassir of the Richmond Tigers and Geelong's Jackie Perry. On the bench, Becky Webster as our defender from Geelong. Our midfielder is Michaela Can of the Collingwood Magpies. Ruck is Lexi Hamilton of Sydney Swans. She kicked 2 goals but had kind of lower, so that's why I have Matilda as the starting forward. Tara Bohannon of the Gold Coast Suns, and my utility, Tiana Smith of the St. Kilda Saints. We jump to the power rankings really quickly. We're far enough. Again, the what have you done for me lately power rankings. At 5, the Richmond Tigers. At 4, the Essendon Bombers. 3, the Hawthorn Hawks. 2, the Brisbane Lions. And at 1, the North Melbourne Roos, maintaining the #1 spot on the power rankings for this season. Let's jump right into it. I have to fix my fixture thing to be sure that I have the correct round on my big board. I know we were very, very close. We're early in the week. I know the injury lists still haven't come out, but let's do some really quick tipping very quickly so then this young lady can get her beauty rest and I can go make sure that I have my computer to do my work. So we'll start off Thursday night footy. Yes, Thursday night, Tuesday and Wednesday are footyless. I don't mind that. As the Carlton Blues host the Western Bulldogs. Man, what a Friday night belter we have here. I like the Blues in this one as much as I love the Doggies. I think the Blues coming off a nice win out west, maybe a little bit lackluster with the travel, but I think the Blues just too good in this one.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think because they've found a little bit of spark in them and they've got a little bit of footy momentum with their game plan of what hasn't been won recently, but they've sort of found some form. I'm going to tip Carlton at Icon Park.
Alrighty, a fun one at Alberton Oval under the lights. This will be a good one. Port Adelaide hosts the St. Kilda Saints. Who do you like in this one?
Oh, that's actually kind of a hard one to be honest, but I think
Mhm.
I'm going to go Saints with their discipline and structure in the back line.
I'm going to tip Port. I like the way Port is playing. I think they play really well at home. I think they'll get a nice little crowd on a Friday night. I think this is where Port kind of show why they're super talented and they have a bright future. Saints having to come over to Albert Oval, I think will be a little bit tough. I like Port in this one. It'll be fun to see Ash Saint and Gemma Houghton against Serene Watson in that defense. That'll be a fun one to watch. The Saturday afternoon footy sees Hawthorn host GWS. I mean, this is Hawthorn and Hawthorn big, unless GWS pulls something out of a body cavity I can't say on a podcast.
Yeah, I think we don't need to elaborate on this one. I'm just going to say Hawthorn.
All right, Hawthorn on that one. Up to Henson Park in Sydney. Hopefully, a nice representation of the red and white as the Swans host the Gold Coast Suns. Who do you like in this one?
Going to go to the Swannies with this one at Henson Park. It's at their home ground and they'll have a really fun match on their home tour, I reckon.
Swanee's in this one, but Gold Coast is going to push. Gold Coast is going to push because Charlie Rowbottom in that midfield is going to give the test. I believe Laura Gardner is still out with that hand injury, so it'll be interesting to see who Tanya Kennedy goes to. Does she go to a Rowbottom in this one? And can they get the midfield production? It will be the biggest thing. I think Lexi Hamilton going up against Lauren Bell will be a fun little rock matchup on that one. But Swans have just enough firepower to score, but Gold Coast will push them. That'll be a fun one. Over to Casey Fields down in Melbourne as the Melbourne Demons host the Richmond Tigers. This is a big one for both teams here. Richmond trying to solidify themselves for a chance at top four, and Melbourne trying to get back into the finals. Who do you like in this one?
Oh yeah, this is a hard one. We've got Melbourne that are got a bit more to fight for, where Richmond are a little bit probably a bit more settled, even though they had tough game on the weekend. But it's gonna be a good midfield battle as well with Monconti, Grace Egan, Katie Horn. Oof. Oh, I'm gonna say Richmond.
I want to tip Melbourne really bad because they're at Casey Fields with the wind, but I like
Yeah.
what Richmond is doing. I think their
Yeah.
midfield is going to cause issues for Taylor Hanks and Kate Hoare, I think having to deal with Ellie McKenzie, who's playing really good footy now that she's healthy, and Mon Conti in absolutely ripping form. I think the Tigers in this one, but this is a close one. Melbourne is in this one to the fourth quarter. I think this is a cracking game. I also like Richmond in this one, but close. All right, Sullivan Logistics Stadium out in Perth. Here we go. Western Derby. Can your Dockers get it done? I like them. I'm gonna tip the Docks in this one. West Coast gives them a test for three quarters, but I think the fourth quarter is where Fremantle pull away.
My gut's telling me to go against my team. I really don't like it. I'm gonna tip West Coast, so then if I'm wrong, I'm happy.
It's the double
I
side
just
tip. I
gotta
love
just
it.
got
I've done
some.
that so many times for Sydney this year.
Yeah, like on paper, like you said, paper, Freo should be winning it, but I think it's just going to be one of those wild card games where anyone can win this one, to be honest.
I agree. Completely agree on this one. A fun one down at GMHBA Stadium as to the Cats host the Brisbane Lions in this one. Who do you like in this one?
In Geelong will be interesting. Be a good one for Brisbane to prove they can play anywhere again. But I think just with the firepower that Brisbane have, they're going to win.
Brizzy win this one. Cats push them, but Brizzy win this one. A little too much firepower for
Yeah.
that Cats midfield to have to deal with on that one. A fun one at Windy Hill. This is a cracking one as the Essendon Bombers host the top of the table North Melbourne Roos. I like the Roos in this one. Maddie Prasparkas will have an absolute headache having to deal with all of the midfielders that North is going to throw at her. I think this is going to be a tough one. Bombers stay in this one, but I think North's class takes them over the line in the fourth quarter. I like the Roos.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the same thing of, Essendon will push them and really test them, but like North will be able to capitalize on when the slip ups do happen for Essendon. That just they'll be accurate and disciplined just to get the job done when they need to. So I'm going to tip North.
And last but not least, at Victoria Park in Melbourne, as the Collingwood Magpies host the red hot Adelaide Crows. Crows in this one, and this could get ugly quickly.
Yeah, it could get ugly, very ugly. And I think after, like I said, with the game that they had with GWS, putting their percentage up and able to have a lot of learnings from that game as well, I think they're gonna get the win away.
All righty, that is it. All nine games tipped. We have gone through it. This has been so much fun. As per usual, Simbo, so much fun to chat footy with you. It's been fantastic. I know we had our computer issues a little bit earlier with the internet. Again, transatlantic internet can be fun sometimes. So, as
Yeah.
per usual, always great to chat with you. Hope everything is going well for you, and hopefully you enjoy the rest of your off season before you get started here really, really soon. Cannot wait for the AFLW to hop back on very soon.
Thanks so much, Johnny. Love having being on here. So yeah, can't wait to chat to you again. Thanks so much for having me.
And that'll be it for our podcast. Again, keep an eye out. More coverage still to come with the footy. We will get through the AFLW season, and then I will take somewhat of a break, even though I will be doing some my fun little off-season supporter series to kind of keep the footy alive while we wait for January and February to go through. So that'll be it for another episode of Donnie's Disposals. Keep track for more footy very, very soon.